Are they particularly?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Review and the approval of minutes are online, and I'm gonna get off to old business.
All right, so first in our old business, we have policy IGDB, student publications. The last time we met, you had me go ahead and check with Andrew Henius about the wording from the ACLU and his most recent edits in that particular policy. And based on sending him that email, he made a couple of different edits in the document. So if you take a look at page 2, there's not a line right here, but under the distribution of literature, he has added the word substantially. And then in the second paragraph, he has he put a strike through the observance of these rights balanced against the duty of educating students in the orderly manner to protect the rights of all. So he felt very comfortable defending this, he thought it was perfectly good to go. Any other questions?
Right, I think we talked about this. I think there's gonna be a never ending battle.
Yeah.
AC, like, so I guess to give kids as much freedom, let's say, we can't let you have others. I think it's the best we can probably do.
Yeah, I think we should try to send it forward then and let the school committee look at it. Everybody sound good? Yeah. All right. So next on the agenda is our final rule, Title IX policy and grievance procedure. At our last meeting, this is one that we have been looking at, and we were going to go through it based on some of the information, Michelle, that you had brought forward about making sure it was equitable for all students. And so I just wanted to start with, I feel as though this policy looks good in terms of what it's supposed to be doing for sex discrimination and protecting all students, including our gender, non-conforming. I know you shared with me something from Westerly, and did you get a chance to look at the two that
I think you are absolutely right. I think it's more policy JBB. We have to really kind of dig our heels into.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to question about this, still moving it forward, is what has been given to me since then about the lawsuit with Moms of Liberty. How they fought in Kansas, and apparently they fought again in Rhode Island and won for religious exemption. So that to me is also wondering, I'd like to talk to Andrew about making sure where do these two come and play as one, and being uniformed and not having just certain schools be able to hold it up and not other schools be able to hold it up, if that makes sense.
It does, if I'm understanding, but everybody else could jump in too. I know when he did our training with us in August, it basically each school can have their own petition or injunction, and then we would follow the old policy in that case. So it's constantly being updated, and until that injunction is in place, we follow the new one that we have. That's how I understood it, but certainly, anybody else remember anything different? Or
There are 3 schools. What is the, what is the lawsuit entail?
I think it just matters. I'm not the expert, but I think if you are part of that organization and you filed an injunction, we cannot use this current Title IX, the 2024 final rule. We have to use the old one.
Part of what organization?
Is it Moms for Liberty?
Moms of Liberty.
Moms of Liberty.
Right. But I also think, and it's not just a personal thing, having a policy that's kind of across the board than instead of just being individual for each school. Because I feel like if it's one school, it could eventually end up trickling to more schools. And then now we have a policy that we're not upholding.
But they had already, if the Mothers of Liberty have made a complaint against a school, they already revert to the 2022 policy, Title IX policy.
And I guess I wanted to get with Andrew and see if there's a middle ground or put the two together legally. I just think it's smart to do that.
I think the question that I have for Andrew, and I think it's to the same help, is that, my understanding would be flawed, is that the federal government came out with a 2024 version of the Title IX investigation policy. And the expectation is that all, organizations, because this extends, I think, beyond just schools, all organizations have to use 2024, but like with any legal question, anybody can petition for an injunction, which just stays that ruling. And that's what's happened in 3 of our schools, but many schools across the country, is that stays the 2024 and allows those that are part of the injunction to revert back, as superintendent said, to the 2020 version of the investigation rules. The question I would have for Andrew is, without the injunction for those schools, are we still forced for everybody else to use 2024? I believe we are.
States are sovereign though. States are sovereign over federal.
Mhm.
10th Amendment, states are sovereign. So even though the federal government may cover it, states have individual sovereignty.
With Moms of
So
Liberty
it's-
went to Rhode Island and Rhode Island sided with Moms of Liberty.
I haven't seen that lawsuit.
I just got it.
Okay. All right.
My recollection from the day Andrew spoke about it at the 20th, when we were all together, is exactly like Dr. Taylor stated. There were a couple of schools, he called out my school is one that we have to follow the old protocols. And
Also, your school actually is.
Yeah, we have
Yes.
3
Oh.
schools.
yes,
We know.
so I think what Dr. Taylor said was spot on, according to what I wrote down, what Andrew said, that everybody else is moving forward, and those schools that have this injunction.
So within our
are following
own
the-
district, there are some schools.
Correct.
That will apply differently.
So what are the differences between those 3 schools and the rest of the district? What are you doing different?
I think because the injunction is there, we have to follow the old protocol that was put in.
So
We can't follow the updated federal.
So what is the old protocol? What's different about it?
So the new 2024 final rule gets much more explicit about your transgender, non-conforming students. It also protects pregnant women or those that have had pregnancy
Okay.
from being, I guess,
And
discriminated
the old
against.
just
Doesn't
leaves
go
that
in,
language out?
yes, exactly.
So if we had a student now, to Mrs. Murray's point, if we had a student now who was part of the transgender identity, and the 2020 version doesn't cover those individuals as a discriminatory class, we'll say a discriminatory group, then at some of our schools, when you read the 2020 version, there's no same protections for those folks in there because you're following 2020, we're in 2024. They're included in the groups of folks that we would have to respond with a proper Title IX investigation. And so that's.
So what happens to those students that are in that boat in those 3 schools that perhaps have a lawsuit?
They're not involved in the new. And the reason for my question.
Individuals in the
Correct.
schools on both sides.
Correct. And just from a district perspective, my real urgence for getting this cleaned up one way or the other as soon as possible is that if a child Hamaro comes to us with a Title IX complaint, who is part of the protected 2024 groups now, what are we to do as administrators? Are we to follow the 2020? Are we to follow the 2024? Because if we don't follow it correctly for these students, we open ourselves up to liability for not following Title IX correctly. So we owe it to the students, if they have a concern, to do the right thing by them. So whatever we decide, I would just really hope that, because if I'm a principal, I won't know what to do to investigate this correctly unless we have.
The problem is, whichever one you pick, you're still open to a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Either way.
Either way, so
that's-
what do you do?
That's
Do you
my
do?
question now moving forward
lean
with
towards-
Andrew, is can't we find some kind of happy medium of some sort?
Between the
Well, I'm not
But
sure.
also,
Go ahead.
well, I guess my next question is, so what is the difference of handling any situation between the two?
So Title IX has, and this does a very good job, whether it's 2020 or 2024, lists exactly what needs to be done when a Title IX grievance is put in, right? So if you're a school principal, this tells you step one, this, 10 days, step two, this, blah, blah. The concern we have is certain groups are called out in 2024 that get these, protections and procedures in place that were not called out in 2020. That's the middle ground. Like, I think ultimately the big difference, and I haven't lined them both up next to each other, so I'm going to disclaim that. But the major difference is, and I'm making this up just for the purpose of a point, there's 10 groups back in 2020, and there's 12 groups or 14 groups that are covered by this in 2024. So if we're kind of finding a happy medium, are we trying to just find like 12 out of the 14? Like, what are we trying to do?
I mean, you have to protect
Like,
I
everyone.
want to know what protects the most students.
Which the new
2024.
one does, because it covers more of these groups.
So here's, I guess, to the administrators. So the other thing that's another parent has given to me, apparently there's a young girl in vets that had her boyfriend in the bathroom and responded, "It's 2024, men can go into the bathrooms now."
I think that's more on the other policy.
No.
And
That's the other.
that's the JV, whatever.
So
But
that's not.
That's not
That's
this.
not
That's what we don't want.
No, that's not
Right,
this.
but
This
that's
is just
not-
how.
that's-
we-
And that shouldn't happen ever,
No.
anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not saying any of you
Well, it
do.
could happen even back in.
Oh, well, of course it
2000 and
could. Well, of course it could, but it shouldn't. And obviously, if you have a girl with a boyfriend, that is a heterosexual couple, he doesn't belong in the bathroom. Totally different. It's not the same.
But I think
It
that's
shouldn't
the
be.
other
I'm not
policy,
saying anyone
right?
agrees with
Right,
that.
yeah.
No, I'm just saying that to that
Kristen,
parents that ask
Yeah.
that boy should not be in there.
I also, I just want to, I know you got cut off, but I think, I think this one is the sexual discrimination policy, and I think we have to treat them separately. Like we looked at when we met,
Yeah.
the JDB, that policy that we're referring to is a different policy.
This policy also tells you how to investigate a complaint, what steps to go through, the timeline.
That's good. They do that.
So this is the one that's already been, I'll make it bigger for you guys too. But if we go down to, I believe, after the protocol, and this was it looks very much like a template because when we compared it to Westerly, it was word for word. I mean, there wasn't one change to it, but I believe it's under F where we get into the bathroom situation, which I know was a concern and a lot of them.
I think page 7.
Is that the biggest issue in front of people, the bathroom?
And the overnight should be part of that. Overnight and the lockdown.
Yeah, so I feel like we should keep this separate and
For
maybe if you
sure.
want to
Like, I get that.
review this, we
Absolutely.
can put that on the agenda. But I think when you're talking about that specifically, that really doesn't have anything to do with the Title IX. I mean, they're related in the bullying that you're worried about and all of that information. But I also am very concerned to Dr. Taylor's point. This was supposed to be in effect August 1st. Now we know we're behind, but we are really living ourselves open to having some issues if we don't kind of at least narrow it down to having both in place, you know? I would love to see this go forward. Can I get that off or are you good?
No, I was just looking at that. I agree that JVB needs to be a whole nother conversation because
Yeah.
I feel like all the comments we're hearing is about
No, that's what she
JVB.
said.
This is just the marching orders on how we handle somebody that has a complaint.
Right, but I
Complaints,
guess
yeah.
my thing with this one was saying like, okay, so we're gonna move forward with this, but only in certain schools. So we don't have a uniform policy throughout the entire district.
But I think that's, honestly, I think this is probably the safest place to be because this template that was given to us is all legalized and looked at already. So I feel like we should be able to go forward and be able to operate under 2 we have Andrew to let us know which one we need to, you know, follow if we have a complaint under that. But just put something in place right
So
now.
hypothetically, I'm a mom, I just find out about this, I called up my school, and I tell my friend, there's now we have more schools. What happens then when more schools end up popping up and people?
We would revert back to the old.
Yeah,
policy.
and
And then
we
now we
Like
talked
those
about that.
particular
So now we just have
schools.
two policies in play.
But that's what he expected. Like, that was not something that he was concerned about. He said, and that's updated often, and we will, as soon as we get a complaint, we would see if somebody's filed an injunction, follow one or the other procedure. So I do feel like he's prepared with that. I think that's how everyone's proceeding. And I think, again, if we're concerned about some of those other issues, we can kind of look at that.
Yeah,
JD.
no, I mean, like I said, I get that. It just doesn't make sense to me that we're having two different policies. What do you think?
Well, yeah,
Agreed, but I mean, bottom line, it's all about lawsuits, and if the lawyer thinks it's okay, then
right. Yeah.
that's what I think anyway.
If the
I
law
mean,
says
I don't
one
know,
thing,
because
and
it really
advises
is all about
us, we
lawsuits.
have to follow it. But we definitely need something to protect our district now. And to protect, if this is the most protective measures for the kids, we want to protect the kids.
We just have two different going.
Yeah.
And to your point about the two different, even though what I'm about to say has the same net effect as having the two different that you mentioned, we have one Title IX policy, which depending on the passing would be this one. And we have an injunction for some schools, a legal injunction forces us to comply with the old, but as a district, we just have one, unless there's a legal injunction that forces you to revert back to the 2020 language for those schools. So as a district, we don't have two on the books, we have one on the books. But we have a legal, and just like any legal injunction, if I'm trying to sell something and somebody gets a legal injunction, it just stops my sale, doesn't mean you can't sell something, it stops my sale of something. So
It's like a backup plan.
Yeah, so I think for our purposes as a district, we have one policy, but people have the right to have injunctions, and that's what the courts figure out.
It's up to you.
No, I mean, I'm willing to
We
go
can,
to a vote, yes, with the group, because
I think we should protect the district from lawsuits and also use the measures that will protect the most of our children and.
but I guess what I'm also asking is with this group, are we keeping ourselves open to that as well?
Well, you are no matter what you do, either way, and this way you have both, so it kind of protects everybody.
I guess lawsuits from the other side.
I don't think,
So
why
within,
would?
it would, I'm sorry, so within those, anybody that comes forward, any person that comes forward and says, I want to uphold this injunction at my students, my child's school, then we have to honor that. Is that correct, Dr. Sale?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
They'd have to go to court.
Yeah, as long as they got to the right.
They-
They have to
So
go
they have
through
to
the right
file.
Three
Yeah.
schools went to court
Yes.
Yeah, and it's,
since August,
Yes.
yeah,
so it
Organizations,
doesn't take very long.
organizations went to court on their behalf.
So it doesn't take long.
probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if a family decides they're going to want to do that, they will get their answers quickly. So that protects all of us, right? Protects all the children, honors those families. That's good. How do you feel about that? If it honors the family that may bring it up,
Yeah, like I already said, I'm willing to go
okay.
as a group
All right.
to say,
Yes. I think this is a safe measure, and if a family feels it's not safer, they have recourse.
I know, I'm just like, okay, again, devil's advocate. What if like 90% of the schools end up doing this?
Then
But yeah,
90%.
90%, yeah, we go back.
Because
Right,
we're
I
just
mean,
going to follow whatever the law
yeah, And they
says.
have to
We're
defend that.
not picking and choosing, we're following law.
Because even the schools that have injunctions,
Policy.
we're still going by JVB with the bullying and doing
they're
protective
two
measures. and
different
that.
policies, one, yeah, they're two different.
But so the schools with injunction, JVB that still has bullying too, right? But it still protects
It'll talk,
those
it
kids too, right?
protects the transgender
Right.
non-conforming and gives them the ability to, it spells out for schools how to handle those situations, whether they're, transitioning, if there needs to be a plan in place, who needs to know, all of those pieces. So it looks like that is that'll stay in place, for those students.
As it should.
Yeah. I think it's the safest bet to do this, go forward with it. I really do. Otherwise, we're really in limbo. And I think if Andrew knew a way to combine the two very different policies, I think they would have worked on that, to be honest. I think, that seems to be, but are you good with going forward with that, or would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's no real way to appease both sides.
He was very open
Yeah.
about seeing it pop up more and more as
Right.
word
Yeah,
travels
he
and stuff.
didn't
So I
seem
think
worried.
he's fully expecting that there'll be more schools with the injunction placed.
So everyone will protect those on both sides.
Right, because also, are we also gonna end up with a policy that we're not even adhering to?
We have to follow whatever the law says. That as long as we follow the law, we're protecting students and we're protecting ourselves as a district.
Yeah.
As long as we follow the law.
And this was already approved legally, so that's where I feel like we're safe to know that they feel like they can defend that, that's where it is. And then there are other, like you said, recourse for those that don't want that one in place.
And this just includes, like we said, just more folks, right? So if you're a school that's
Yeah.
through an injunction, having to file having to follow a 2020 policy, then it means that if a transgender student were to approach you and say, I feel like I need to submit a Title IX complaint, if you're following 2020, you look here and you say, I'm sorry, Title IX does not cover a transgender. 2024, it does. The line here is in the policy change on, page 1 of this, just underlines the fact that, while public schools do not discriminate on the basis of sex and prohibit sex discrimination, including 2024 now, transgender, gender nonconforming, and transition students, it just allows those students to also be eligible to file a Title IX complaint, whereas in 2020 they weren't. Same with pregnant parenting mothers. They're able through 2024 to say, I feel like I'm being discriminated against due to my parenting status as a student who's parenting a child. A school that's in a 2020 injunction will say, no, unfortunately, this is not a Title IX group. You're not part of a Title IX group. Doesn't mean we don't investigate and we tackle bullying, but just Title IX, as we all know, ratchets up that investigation into a more the serious of investigations. And now we're just, as Ms. Hazelwood said, covering more students. We're allowing more students access to a Title IX level investigation. That's what 2024 does differently than 2020.
One of the two types of investigation.
It's just who we can investigate for. Like Title IX is investigation for discrimination based on certain things. Not everybody gets Title IX if it doesn't qualify for the investigation.
Was the whole section on pregnancy, was that in the old or no?
I think it's
That's
part new, yeah.
That's all.
That's
new.
all.
That's all new.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Good thing.
We just took care of them with that.
Yes.
Yeah, but now they have,
But
now they have legal rights now.
Correct.
In case somebody didn't take care of it the way they should have.
Oh, we did.
As we
All
do.
right, so
That's right.
we good to go forward
On first read.
for a first read?
Let's read it down.
Everybody's good with that? Okay,
Yes.
all right. The next one is DJC, bidding requirements and procedures. And this was, tabled, I guess is the right word, the last time we met, Brandon, because you wanted to check on that second paragraph, all purchases below 1,000 to now is 5,000, is that correct?
Right, because that in practice, 5,000 is what the threshold is within the district, and that's within state law as well. So we just wanted to update it to be in line with.
Okay. So nothing else was changed since the last at the last meeting. You didn't put anything different. Okay, I see.
Nope, everything else is in line with our procedures, so that was the only update.
One, two, three, four paragraphs down, let's cross out administration will make telephone contacts with 3 or more vendors to award to the lowest responsible and qualified bidder. What?
So not,
Something we don't
not
do
in
anymore?
practice, so we don't, in terms of going out for bid, we have a formal bidding process, so we wouldn't actually accept this as a formal bid if we were to just go out and make telephone calls.
Okay,
There's no
but is
doc-
part of the formal bid process still going for the lowest responsible and qualified bidder, or is that not?
Will it always be the lowest bidder? Or
No, there's,
Well, it says lowest and qualified, so,
it is.
sometimes the lowest bidder is not the best.
well, that's why it says,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't. Definitely want them qualified.
Good question. I'm just trying to see if there's other language that covers that, I swear.
Because I mean, somewhere we do want them to be maybe inexpensive, but definitely qualified. I just didn't know if that language is anywhere else.
And if I remember, so this one was also brought to us because of everything that just happened. Did we make any changes to protect ourselves?
So I think that in general, the thresholds that are listed here are guided by state law. So when we ran afoul of our own policy, it's because we failed like in our procedures as management. So we should have done a better job of reviewing the bids that came through and making sure that we caught it before it moved forward into a contract. So I don't think that there are major changes that are needed for the policy itself. It's more just we have to refine our own practices internally and make sure it doesn't happen again. Again, there will be, once the full report comes out from the investigation that's ongoing, there might be other recommendations to potentially update the policy, but I don't foresee that being the conclusion. And I think the policy is good. It's just a matter of making sure we follow it.
Should we wait on it until that all comes through then, instead of bringing it back again?
We can.
Well, just so you know, too, the line that I just asked about that's crossed out is actually in paragraph 3. It does say that responsible and qualified local bidder and the lowest responsible and qualified bidder. So that actually is in paragraph 3.
Yeah, and
Well, maybe it was just redundant then, and that's why it was crossed out.
I mean, this is minimal changes being done anyways. I mean, does it hurt to really just wait, find out?
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion. I know Sean wanted to get it in front of the policy committee just because of the investigation, but if it sits here and doesn't go in front of the school committee, I don't think that that's a big issue.
Right.
It looks like the only change though is from 1,000 to 5,000.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not that major, so I feel like, why don't we just wait and then see what the report comes?
Yeah.
We anticipate the report conclusion soon, so.
Yeah.
Right.
We
Oh, we
should be ready. Yeah.
All right, so we'll wait on this one then, is my understanding, correct? Okay. All right, and then the last one is DIC financial reports and statements. This one, we ended up tabling. Darlene had a question because if you look at the revised date, it was March 12th, 2024. And I'm pretty sure she wanted to look at the revision history here because she couldn't understand why we may have made the change and then come back again.
Yes.
So I found the revision history from Dr. Cecil's file. So I don't know if this is, I think I actually attached it if you have a copy. But in the original one, you can see that in the first paragraph, you struck that school committee shall prepare a financial report of its activities, which shall be submitted to the mayor and the city council within 90 days after the close of the fiscal year. That was because that's not the practice anymore, right?
It's not the practice, and it's relatively restrictive because within 90 days of the end of the year, we don't have an accurate depiction of what the financial year will look like.
And in March, or right around then, it looks like there was a middle piece here in green. Can you see? Okay, if I can make it bigger, but it says a statement of the financial condition of the school department shall be published annually immediately following the audit. that was struck from the language there, and that was the difference.
Yeah. I actually I don't remember the conversation. I'd almost have to go back to watch
Oh,
the discussion to see why that was struck from it. If we recorded it, I don't remember if we were doing that at that point. Probably not. Can you read that one more time?
so it says a statement of the financial condition of the school department shall be published annually immediately following the audit.
It probably just redundant, so that, I
That's
mean,
what I thought
the
when I
audit's a
started.
legal requirement, and those financial statements are publicly available to anyone who requests them. So to put it in policy saying that we'll make them available, they're available no matter what. So to state it doesn't really add anything to the policy.
So that was the only change. And so when I think Sean had asked for these to come forward again.
Yeah.
This was one of them.
Yeah.
And with that came the striking of that very first.
Right, and
sentence,
again, I
correct?
think that just having gone through a full year of being here and seeing the actual financial process, it's just not realistic to get the city those, to put in policy that we're gonna get the city financial results within 90 days is not likely. And we have informal conversations back and forth about estimates, but to formalize it in a policy just seems restrictive, and we're not gonna meet it.
When is the audit usually completed?
It should be done by the 31st of December, so 6 months in the.
Exactly, 6 months.
Yeah,
Now, if the audit is not completed by that time, we're in violation of this policy because we're unable to furnish that within 6
Yeah.
months.
yeah, so we do request extensions from time to time, which we did last year from the Auditor General in order to, I should say this is common among school districts to request an extension for more time to complete your financial statement audit. So something to consider if we want to actually include that in the policy, some sort of language around an extension.
Like I'm just thinking, rather than perhaps fix us to within 6 months of the close of the fiscal year.
Yep.
If the audit takes 7 months, then you almost want this policy to reflect that within a certain time frame upon the completed audit, it gets sent to the
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Because then you'd be violating your policy every year if
Yeah.
it's January 30th.
Yeah, I mean, typically in the past, though, didn't we do the 90 days? Because that puts us into March. And usually the budget hearings are in May. That gives the mayor and city council 2 months to look over the books
That's
before they
after,
can come.
this is after the close of the, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
That's
that's after the close of the fiscal year. So that's 90 days after June 30th.
Oh,
So
all
this
right.
is September 30th.
But it
Okay.
should almost say within 90 days after. that.
Okay, I thought it was 90 days after the audit.
You're covered.
But so our audit is done in conjunction with the city's audit. So we oftentimes have to ask for an extension because I'm not blaming the city, but it might be that the city just hasn't provided all their information yet. So it's not
Okay.
necessarily on the school department per se that we didn't file the audited financials timely, but they also are aware of all of our financial results during the audit. So to share information with them would be redundant because they already know they're part of it.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why we initially put that in there.
I just think there's a chance that we could be a little after 6 months through no fault of our own. We just don't want to say we promise in 6 months in policy.
Yeah.
It's out of our control.
The reality of it is that this is probably a well-intentioned sentence in terms of we formalize the fact that we share financial information with the city. But to promise like the close of the financial statements within 90 days, it's not realistic. It's never happened.
You can't.
The past 5 years, we've typically filed our audited financial statements within 7 or 8 months of the close of the fiscal year. So 90 days is just not realistic.
But within 6 months of the close of the fiscal year and the next line is okay?
That's what we were just discussing. And we might want to add a comma that just says,
Unless an extension is required?
yeah, well, unless, barring
Yeah.
the need for an extension.
There's something to give you.
Yes.
Where would you like, and what are we?
So after shall be submitted to the mayor and the city council, I would just add a comma and
Yeah.
say,
unless.
Barring an extension.
Unless an extension was granted by the Auditor General.
That's good. And it's an official extension.
Yeah. Which we applied for with the city. The
Unless
city
an
also asked for.
extension was
Granted by the auditor
Granted
general.
by the
The Auditor General.
capitalized portion.
Mhm.
That's good. I guess we'll release in case.
How's that? Okay,
Yeah, that's good.
any other questions or concerns?
Is there anyone that could grant an extension besides the Auditor General?
Nope, not for municipalities.
All right, so are we good to go ahead and send this forward?
Yeah, a question that just popped into my head. Sorry, going back to it. Passing the Title VIII, does that supersede us redoing, JBB to making up of the parents happy?
So two different, I don't want to confuse people that may be watching.
Right, fair enough.
Okay, so let's first say this part, if this is gonna go forward, DIC, are we good with that going forward? And then we can talk about.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
So first read.
First read for this one.
Okay.
So I think because they're two separate policies, and if you are asking for a review of JBB, I would think this policy committee would
But
be
does
granted.
Title VIII, passing that through, would that supersede whatever we do to JBB? Does it supersede that?
No.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't say,
Yeah.
no, okay.
Yeah, that one is all about just protection about, bullying and whatnot. And then
Just because you said you handled everything differently, so I'm like, well, does that mean that that one will always overplay what we do with JBB?
I don't believe so. I really feel like they're two separate things.
No.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah. But are you asking for us to look at JBB too?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Yep, I can put that on the agenda for next time. All right, so just to recap, we have the IGDB student publications. We're sending that forward for a first read. ACA final rule Title IX policy and grievance procedure. You're going to send that through for a first read. DJC bidding requirements and procedures, we're going to hold off and look at that after we get our report. I don't remember what it was called. And then finally, DIC financial reports and statements can go forward for a first read. Okay. All right, then we do not have any new business, so I'll turn it back to you, but I also would like to make sure we address the next meeting on here. If you don't mind, because it's on election day, we would need to pick a new date, and you had mentioned Monday is your better day for this.
For 4:30.
Yeah, for 4:30. So I didn't have this on here, but at that point, that would be 11/4, I believe.
Yeah.
November 4th. We know, I know, that's okay. That's okay with you. Lynn will be there.
I have a conflict as well, but that's okay. That's.
Can anybody else? What was your other choice to?
I mean, I could do Wednesday. I just can't make 4:30.
What would be the time frame?
We're looking at, I think the earliest 5 o'clock.
Would anybody be opposed to 5 o'clock on the Wednesday?
I teach a class, I can't.
Same thing. Okay. All right. So
Thursday?
we're not really leaving too much time for, I just want to make sure, because I have to get the agenda first reads and second reads to the school committee. So I just want to make sure. I guess I would have, is it 48 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's Thursday night, you've got Friday and
Yep.
Monday, that's a little tight.
Yeah, it's tight, but Thursday?
Oh, and Monday's a holiday, the 11th. So if you're
That's
looking for
the
2
Thursday.
days, you're looking for 48 hours to get it to school committee, you're not gonna make it.
Oh, I
because it's
see
a
what you're
holiday
saying.
on Monday, that's not considered 48
All right,
hours.
we'll back too.
Before, the last week of October.
The last week in October.
2 meetings on October. I can't on Monday, keeping out hearing board.
Well, I mean, you do a Tuesday on that. You,
I can do Tuesday.
There's not like, there's no holiday on the 29th.
So we're saying October 29th.
Yeah.
29th at 4:30. Correct? Make sure I'm right, because I don't have the calendar in front of
Yeah,
me.
that works.
I can check that out, but that's a Tuesday, correct?
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
Tuesday.
Good. Okay. All right, I just want to put that on, I'm sorry, I'll turn it back to you. You can go ahead and,
I mean, I think that public comment. And then that's it, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
all right. Meeting adjourned.